The mayor of Kansas City is here on KCMO 95.7 FM. We are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. It is great to have you here, as always, as well. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your time. Good morning. Great to have you here. And I just wanted to start off with this last week. And shame on me, I was not aware of this until I talked to our buddy Nick Haynes. But when we spoke last week, I didn't realize you were in Germany. So where was all the fanfare over the overseas trip last week?
Ain't that the truth, right? Pete, I realized, because I think they give me clips of your radio show, and I guess y'all didn't notice, I send an email to most everybody in the press every week with our weekly schedule and all that stuff, just so it won't become a big kerfuffle. Sometimes people don't read them, and that's how you get stories on Channel 4 before, although we always do it. But we need to add you to the list. We just figured you are so busy with so many other stuff, the college sports blog and all of that, we haven't had you on. But we'll make sure we get it handled.
Well, I would appreciate that. So why? I mean, you're a man who likes to share your opinions and your thoughts and your whereabouts and everything. Why was this trip not received with the same kind of attention on your end?
Well, I think I would say this, right? We did the release that goes to, probably 50 different press members. I tend to think it actually relates to the reaction of the people out in the world. And I think it's fair to say that Qatar, a trip prior to that, was just in the news a lot more. The president had been the week before. There were both conservative and progressive takes against progressives, because I assume they didn't like where I was going, where the president had just been. The conservative take, just the general, this guy wastes time and all of that. But for some reason, I guess our longer-term allies just aren't as much of an issue. But it was an honor. Went to World War I and World War II battlefields. Went, of course, to cemeteries of American servicemen and talked a lot about business in our region with a group from Missouri and Kansas. And so proud to do it. I did not stay around long enough to join up with Governor Kehoe in Paris right now, but I hope he's doing well as well.
So with that, of course, when we talked last week, I asked if you would be at the No Kings protest, and you said no. Little did I know you couldn't make the protest. So, and listen, you were not, just to be clear, and I said this on the show, you were not dishonest in any way. It's not like you said you were going to be here, wouldn't go, but obviously you weren't here to go. So what was your read on the protests last week and what you saw from Kansas Cityans and those around the metro?
Yeah, a few different things. And let me just answer it this way, although obviously didn't get into the nuance last week. I probably would not have gone if I were here, too. A few different reasons, not in any way disrespecting the voices of people, but sometimes I can end up being a distraction at certain events. Others, I think, that ironically are a little less political. You have the chance to just go and be supported. Pride, Juneteenth, other parades that I've typically attended. But on that one, occasionally, right, you get some activists that are looking to shout you down for any number of reasons. So I decided to sit. I would have sat that one out if I were here. And for what it's worth, where I was in Europe, there was also a No Kings protest, which was interesting. Talked to some Americans for a minute, but I didn't really take part. Look, my take on it is exactly what I shared with you last week on the radio, which was that, the extra enforcement needs and all of that, I thought was something more akin to chilling speech. It was unnecessary. And I think what you saw, not just in KCMO, but in Lee's Summit and in Overland Park and all throughout this region, people were basically saying, yeah, let's make sure that our voices are heard. They did so peacefully. They did it entirely appropriately. I was proud of the protests, not just in Kansas City and the surrounds, but frankly, all around the country. I thought you saw a good demonstration of our First Amendment rights, and I was proud of it.
Mayor Lucas is here on KCMO. Something that you were talking about this week upon your return was the fact that homicides in Kansas City and the Jackson County portion of Kansas City are down. And some people, I think, misinterpret that data because homicides are up, but in the Jackson County portion, to your point, they are down. I think we're both high on this prosecutor, but the, underlying part of this is that the Northland, sadly, has seen a major uptick in homicides. North Patrol and Shoal Creek have a combined 15 this year. 2 years ago at this point, they had 1. Last year, they had 4. So we love the numbers coming down in Jackson County. But what do we do about what's happening north of the river?
A few different things. First, on the framing point, Melissa Johnson presented that number at the Board of Police Commissioners this week. That is our new Jackson County prosecutor. And I think, hands down, she's doing great. And I would quibble with, and I think most sane people would quibble with anyone who isn't noting the fact that she is continuing to improve that office. She's bringing prosecution. She's doing good work, and I think it's seeing some good results. So first of all, that is a credit to her. Second reason I framed the information in that way is because I once had a gentleman who was in law enforcement who told me, you don't have a KCMO problem, you have a Jackson County problem, talking about where most of the crime is. I think oftentimes the Jackson County portion of our region gets a lot of attention for negative, actually, and I wanted to make sure that that was centered out, where you do have a prosecutor who's working closely with the police, where there is actually an existing Jackson County jail, where they are incarcerating people, and I think we are seeing better results. In terms of Clay County and Platte County, but really most of those numbers are out of Clay. I think you have a few different things that are at issue right now. What we have said for some time, drugs do have a nexus to violent crime. Domestic violence has certainly been another important part of it. When I did my fentanyl awareness campaign, we went to North Kansas City Hospital. We have worked with folks like the Clay County Sheriff. There is a lot of work we need to do in terms of drug abuse, and it's sad spread, not just in the Northland, but also in Eastern Jack, in Johnson County. You are seeing at least an uptick of things, if not homicides, shootings, and others. Shootings at police officers. One charge yesterday in Lenexa for that. A Lee Summit officer struck a few weeks ago. I mean, I think this is the sort of thing that we are seeing more of. It's drugs, it's domestic violence, and I think that is important work that we need to focus more on, not just in the core of the city, but throughout the region.
Is it also partially that there is, we know the department's down a couple hundred officers. Is it also partially basically using some of those resources in high crime areas of Jackson County, which I don't think anybody's going to quibble with, but
yep.
I mean, just it's a zero-sum game. If you move people to certain areas, you're going to lose people in other areas. Do you think that is part of the issue?
You know, I would not agree with that. I think when you look at kind of the nature of the offense, I unfortunately, although it's my job, read about every homicide that we have in our city and sometimes get more thorough reports on them. If it's a domestic battery incident, then, usually that is something where at least our preventative tool at the moment that an officer could be there is very tough. And so we absolutely need more resources to address it. Same thing with drug offenses. But I think a lot of that comes from more of the how do you make sure somebody can get out of an abusive situation? How do you make sure there are resources and housing? I always think more law enforcement could be good. And I would imagine if we ran the per capita numbers in the KCMO Northland, which is about 170,000 people versus, say, the 190,000 in Overland Park, they probably have a higher per capita number of officers. So we'll try to get there. But I don't think I would assign that the blame for this homicide increase that hopefully we're just seeing here in a moment.
Mayor Lucas is joining us on KCMO Talk Radio. So I want to ask you about your good friend Ollie Gates, who is asking the Royals to consider 18th and Paseo for a stadium. It doesn't seem like that is on your list. There's no evidence to suggest it's been on the Royals list. Is that a realistic site, or is that just wishful thinking?
I love Ollie. I've probably eaten like 3,000 pounds of his food in my lifetime. So, and I have loved his impact and influence on redevelopment of 18th and Vine and the eastern 18th Street corridor. Here's the challenge, right? And actually the television story, which isn't always surprising, but got a bit of it wrong. And they said the former KCATA headquarters. No, that's the current. That is where the buses park. That's where the ATA is. So you have them. And then you also have the Kansas City School District, which owns a huge parcel of land right there. And so, look, it could be doable. Of course, what you would have to do, though, is then negotiate with two additional government organizations. The school board, of course, has its own elected board of folks who would probably look for some good value in selling their land. KCATA has a board of, I think, 13 directors from around the region, as far flung as Cass County to Leavenworth County, everywhere in between. I think that, the devil would be in the details. I find any particular potential site in Kansas City, Missouri to be interesting and fruitful. That being said, I'm not sure if it is as easy as was laid out, but we always respect. Well, Ollie, I continue to think Washington Square Park presents a good option, and not to get too in-depth on all of this, but I continue to believe that we can get to solutions here sooner rather than later, which I think everybody in the region wants.
Is it fair to say that that is the only option getting a lot of serious consideration right now?
Well, because you might contend I wasn't clear enough last week on where I was, I'll give you this one, which is I think that is a fair assertion that is probably the most seriously entertained Kansas City, Missouri site. We'd always listen to more if there was a pivot, but won't play games with it. I think that's the one that people are really talking about.
So how about this? Speaking of Jackson County, you've seen, of course, the assessments roll out, and now you're seeing commercial properties get hit hard, including folks who just have Airbnbs. I know this is not a Kansas City, Missouri issue, but obviously, as the mayor of the biggest city in Jackson County, this impacts a lot of your residents. You got folks wondering, can I keep my small business open with some of these assessments rolling out? What are you saying to your residents and how they should respond to this?
Well, I think here's my concern and frustration. And the last time, and I don't wade into this issue much, the last time I did, it got me a random press release, a letter. The news was outside my house, which, given recent events in Minnesota, I really don't love and certainly didn't love back then. But here's how I'll answer this. I'm the mayor of the largest city in Platte County, the mayor of the largest city in Clay County, and the mayor of the largest city in Jackson County. Why is this not the same level of problem? And don't get me wrong, 15% increases, et cetera, are a challenge for our taxpayers, including commercial property owners in Clay and Platte. But we're not seeing the same type of issue we're having in Jackson. I would ask any leader who is in a position to have an influence sitting at the county level to just try to assess that. And I would ask, as the mayor of the largest city in those three jurisdictions, to just say, how can I make sure our businesses are treated fairly among all of them? What I think one might say is there a way that finally we're seeing this residential treatment that looks at a 15% cap? Is there a way to institutionalize that on the commercial side? Haven't looked up the law yet, haven't done all this sort of stuff, but certainly I read the same stories and see them that you do. A 500% increase here, a 700% increase there. Some of the other changes are incredibly, incredibly challenging to business. They're not the sort of thing that anyone has told me about in Clay or Platte County portions of Kansas City. So I have to think that there is a different way we could get this all handled and done.
All right. Well, we'll have to see what the county folks have lined up for us here going forward. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. We always appreciate your time, and we will talk to you next week.
You're not making me talk Iran, but I'll be ready for takes on that next week, too. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you. We'll be ready for it. We appreciate the time. Mayor Lucas on KCMO Talk Radio.